what is the order of faith and regeneration? Does regeneration precede faith? Now, the question of regeneration preceding faith does tend to be something that really defines a lot of Calvinist Arminian debates, and it's not really language that you'll really hear thrown around in a lot of Lutheran circles. And this became a really key issue in what I see in at least popular Reformed theology with R.C. Sproul. Because R.C., not to say that they didn't believe it before R.C. Sproul, but R.C. Sproul is one who really popularized this distinction, that one of the kind of core and key differences between Arminianism and Calvinism is to say that for the Calvinist, regeneration precedes faith. In other words, faith is a gift of God and it comes after regeneration. So if you look at someone like Billy Graham, he has a book called How to Be Born Again. And the idea is that you make a decision for Christ, and because of your faith, you are born again. So that's the order of things. And that's kind of the typical American evangelical kind of revivalist perspective, is that. And it's in contrast to that Calvinism says that regeneration precedes faith. Now, the question is, what about Lutherans? What do you say about that question? Now, again, I don't hear it phrased in that way, in that I don't see it. It's not really the way that the debate is phrased when you're talking about, say, Arminianism or provisionism. The debate really is more, is faith your decision or is faith a gift of God? That's how we'll phrase it. We're not going to probably phrase it in the regeneration precedes faith category. But with that being said, I'll give you the historic Lutheran tradition in terms of the historic answer that's at least in the scholastics. So the Protestant scholastics, and that includes Lutheran and Reformed, especially in the later periods, you're talking kind of second half of the 17th century, spend a lot of time talking about the Ordo Salutis, or if you're not familiar with the language, what the Ordo Salutis is the order of salvation. Now, the order of salvation outlines, and I've done plenty we did a whole conference on the Ordo Salutis, and I've got a book on the topic that I've written a large portion of at this point. What the Ordo Salutis is not it's not a set of hoops that you have to jump through, which is kind of how it's misrepresentative. It's not a series of steps where you hit one point here, you hit here, and eventually you get to salvation. It's a kind of a misconstrual that I see in a lot of even scholarly theological works critiquing that notion of an Ordo Salutis. And you do find that in certain kinds of, some of that, I do see that in certain kinds of pietism, where there is this kind of, you have to feel this thing and go through this process. But that's not what the Ordo Salutis is. It's basically saying when God saves us, he does a bunch of different kinds of things. There are a bunch of different manifold ways in which Scripture speaks about salvation. So one of those is it speaks about us being united to Christ. It speaks about our being declared righteous, which we refer to as justification. It refers to our being granted a new heart, which is what we refer to as regeneration. It refers to conversion, the illumination of the mind. Scripture just uses all of this language. The Ordo Salutis is just a way to organize these things and say, what are the things God does to save? Now, when we're speaking about regeneration and faith, the Lutheran scholastics define regeneration in this way, is that regeneration is the donatio fidei. That's the Latin phrase, which means the giving of faith, or the gift of faith. Okay, so in regeneration, God makes us new creatures. And the way that he makes us new creatures is by giving us faith. We live out of faith. We live out of a posture of faith. So that's what new life is. So they're coterminous in temporally, meaning that they happen at the same time, right? So, and I know that classic Arminianism does believe that faith is a gift, and there's still a difference in how we work that out. But I see that comment, and I've made this distinction very clear that what provisionism as a theology, which the term seems to have caught on a lot, at least I'm hearing it a lot, is different from classical Arminianism. We have to distinguish those two things. So Lutheranism is certainly closer to classical Arminianism, but still not quite the same as classical Arminianism, because the difference is this: in classical Arminianism, you still need that libertarian free will decision, even though your will is freed by the Spirit to make the decision. Your conversion is still, in some sense, the result of a libertarian free decision. So that's going to be a main difference between where the classical Arminian is and where the Lutheran is. We're going to say faith is a pure gift. You are purely passive. Okay, so pure passivity is the language that's used. in conversion. The human is not active at all. You are receiving faith as a gift. You don't have to actively make a decision to receive the gift. So that's going to be a difference there. But right, so both are going to speak about a kind of prevenient grace, or a grace that comes before. So while we're not going to use the language often of regeneration precedes faith, do we believe that regeneration precedes faith in a logical sense? Yes. Right. When we're talking about logical order of what happens or what's causing what, regeneration causes faith. Yes. So that is a little bit different for us, though, than the Calvinists, because we're going to have a more sacramental perspective on that.